Welcome to the PPRC podcast. My name is Raro, and this is Chewy. Today on the topic, I did not look at it yet, but what is on the topic today?
We're gonna we're gonna talk about the idea of Steam and what will happen if Steam goes down,
Oh, great,
and
great topic.
whether or not we are entitled to games as property or as a revocable license in this digital world where physical CD keys are no longer, I guess, relevant.
That is a great topic because I've been thinking about getting a Steam Deck, and if Valve shuts down all of a sudden, then technically I won't have access to the Steam store, but because it's a computer, you will still be able to use it as a computer, and one benefit is you can always sideload other store launchers. So in case Steam ever goes down or cucks, there's other stores. But we're trying to talk about Steam in general, right? So
Yeah. Well, first of all, is it likely that Steam would ever go down?
it has gone down, and I don't know if you know, but when I was playing GTFO, um, they would have Steam maintenance on Tuesdays. So it actually used Steam servers to actually do matchmaking and lobby hosting, or like connect it.
Okay, that's just an interruption, but to be
Yes,
permanently to be permanently taken offline.
it's interruption, which I guess in a way could have been extended longer if they fucked up maintenance. Would the world care if Steam went offline for a week? Maybe not. I mean, it might screw over some developers who are trying to release during that week and then entice them to a different store, say the Epic Store, because they're trying hard. But if Steam ever goes down for sure, I don't know. What could even kill Steam?
Um, from a business standpoint, nothing really, because they are the dominant store or delivery platform or DRM or whatever
Yes, it's a
it
platform
is
essentially.
for the gaming world. And then like all the other attempts by the big gaming companies like EA and Ubisoft, they tried their they tried their foray into setting up their own native platform, and I mean it's a failure. Let's put it that way.
Yep,
They have failed.
every Ubisoft game I play on Steam goes straight to the launcher, but because they tried so hard, it's all back on
Yes, but
Steam.
that's because it's their own game. If it was any other game, would it go on an Ubisoft launcher? No, I don't think so. And I haven't launched Ubisoft or Uplay or whatever it's called now for years. I
Yeah.
haven't launched Origin, EA Origin for years. Epic Games, I only open it just to download the free games, but I've never bought anything for over a year. And the only thing I've ever purchased was just a few Battlefield games on EA Origin, but that's just because it was Battlefield.
Yeah,
Other than that, everything else I purchased on Steam.
yeah, I agree with you. Steam is a dominant player, and the reputation for Uplay and EA is kind of bad and down in the dumps.
Yes. And what makes Steam a little bit different is that they are a private company. They are not publicly listed, so they don't have to deal with
Investor pressure.
activist investors and like shareholder takeovers and that kind of BS.
Oh, that's an interesting standpoint. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So they're full control of their private
Yes.
company, and I guess they'll always be in control.
Yes. Unless they decide to go public, which if they did go public, I think it would be very well received because everyone knows how dominant and what kind of economic moat that they control over this space of, a gaming platform and a store platform. But I think what has made Steam so powerful was, well, one, they were the first mover, they were the pioneer, and they also did not sell out to become a public company, which allowed them to sort of innovate to what they are today.
My thoughts exactly. And to add on to that, uh, they were basically first on to, with the rise of the internet, to bring digital licenses to the marketplace. And so the way it works now with gaming on Steam is that you buy like a lease or a license to play, be able to play, and it's like you don't actually own the game, but you have a lease. So if your Steam account ever, I don't know, you die, your Steam account cannot be transferred to kids or something like that because then they would have to buy their own game on their own account. Did you know that?
Yes. So the license is non-transferable, and because it's a license, it is not considered as personal property
Mm-hmm.
and therefore does not form your assets. But there's nothing to say that your nephew or your niece could somehow chance upon your password and your user ID and start using it without your permission. There's a chance that could happen.
True, true.
Mhm.
They have to go through Steam's second authentication and reactivate your account if you haven't used it in a while. I don't know. Does Steam cancel your account or lock it down if you haven't used it, like a credit card?
Oh, really? Mine's is permanently logged in, so I haven't had to do authentication in quite a while. So I'm not sure. But I suppose Steam will eventually make measures to enforce authentication.
Well, it's when I was looking at the Steam Deck, it's like for the games that require online, yeah, I know, online connection to like say if you want to play GTA 5 single player or campaign, you would still need the online connection to force you to like online only DRM kind of thing.
Yeah,
It forces you to reconnect to like the network for a little bit.
yeah. So therefore, like the you can say that the game itself usually has a shelf life. Let's put it that way. There's a shelf life for the game, and it's dependent on the support that's given to it. Much
Well,
like much like a Windows operating system license nowadays, there is a relatively defined time frame of when the operating system is supported before, like nowadays, Windows 10 is being phased out eventually.
well, that's based on security updates. As a standalone system, we can work and just have it like not connected to the internet. And I believe the U.S. Army and military have systems that have not been connected to the internet but are still running like Windows XP or something like that, and they have to update that.
Yes,
So in
but
theory, this system, yeah.
I guess for games, the that connection to the server is like essential to run the game.
But to go back to ownership, it's like with consoles, you're buying the computer, but you're buying a console, which is still a computer, but it's pretty much locked down. And I mean, I bought a broken PS4, fixed that, bought Persona 5 Royale and the disc when it first came out, and I played that, and I still have it. So technically, as long as the battery doesn't die in the PS4, I can boot it up anytime I want. And that's technically ownership because I have the disc, that's the game files, I have the
Yes.
console, and I don't know. It also ties into like retro games and game preservation. So, like the DS, if you know about the Nintendo DS store, that went offline, and so there was this huge movement, at least a huge move by some game preserver to buy as much as they can from the store, uh, and archive it. Kind of, you know,
Yeah.
some things on the store are only on the store, and once it shuts down, there's like no guarantee by Nintendo you can never buy them again. Some DLCs or and yeah, which is very sad. But if we try to like, that's because Nintendo has their own hardware iterations, which I guess are phased out. With Steam, the hardware is not as linked to the actual game, so I think Steam will actually last a long time, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Steam is software. In essence, it's a piece of software. So, like as a company, they're making like other things like hardware, like the Steam Deck, right? But their core business is still the platform, the software.
Yeah, so with the Steam Deck, the reason why I guess it's cheaper, 550 US dollars compared to $700 handhelds because they're trying to get people into the Steam ecosystem, and they make their money through, you know, the purchases in the games. So it's like 30%, I think, generally
Yes,
goes to Steam,
but
which is a good
like
model.
as a developer, would I even or a publisher, would I even bother to waste my time and effort on, let's say, the inferior platforms? I probably wouldn't. I would just suck it up, pay the 30% revenue to Steam, and have the broadest um, market reach in one go.
Yeah, I believe there's the market reach, all the users are on Steam, and I believe it's a very good service. Gaben, the CEO of Steam, he talked about piracy as a service problem. So if there's a service, if you can provide a service that's better than piracy, people will flock to that.
Yes, I can agree. Like, cause in the past, let's say I didn't buy some games that I really wanted to buy. However, with Steam, then I was given the opportunity to buy those games, and I ended up buying them.
Yep, and you
So in a
still
sense, Gabe,
their
Gabe
policy
was,
is
yes, correct.
you can still return it within 2 hours and 2 hours of gameplay and 2 weeks, I believe.
Yes, the lesser of the two.
Though you can't do that for everything because then they catch you.
Yeah.
Which means
So
if you have
like,
a crappy computer and you can't run the game, then yeah, just return it.
yeah.
That's a convenience. Otherwise,
So are you happy that we are given games as a license as
mhm.
opposed to having actual ownership or of the property?
I think if it's like a live service, if the game is a service, say you're playing Battlefield and there are servers to run, that's a service. So that'll be different than saying paid for a single player game, you know? Because that's more of a work of art and not really much as a service, if we can differentiate the two.
If it was a purely single player game, however, there are other things that are introduced later on from the release, such as patches, right? Patches to improve, um, let's say, to optimize the game a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe later on there is some add-ons like DLC,
Mm-hmm.
um, except for the fact that it's not let's say it's not downloadable. How would that work?
What do you mean it's not downloadable? What kind of content would it be if it's not downloadable
Like
from?
if like let's say it's okay, well, if it's through Steam,
Yeah,
you don't you don't own the game, right? Because by nature you're locked to the software. You're locked to the platform on which is provided,
yeah.
which inherently means it's not your property. But if you were to buy the game through a CD key, you have a physical piece of media containing all the data and information to run the game.
If we're talking like added things to buy, like you could buy the soundtrack. Yeah, yeah, that's I think you own that. You buy the art book that comes with the Steam. Buy like that would probably be something you can own. If it's like DLC, that's tied to the game, so that's probably something you would not own. If we could differentiate those kinds of like extras, things you buy.
So
Say,
is it a copy of the game that you own, or is it that you actually own the game?
I don't think you own the game on Steam, but if it's
Even on a CD key, like
oh,
it's I don't think anyone would own the game because the intellectual property itself is owned by the publisher.
yeah, that's true.
You wouldn't be able to freely duplicate copies of the game without violating copyright law.
Yeah, I said you own a copy of the game if you have a disc,
Yes.
and you're entitled to do whatever you want, like ripping the game and putting it on the emulator legally. Looking at Nintendo.
Is that actually legal?
Yeah, for emulation for Nintendo stuff, as long as you own the game, you can rip your own keys and the game and run on your own emulator. It's just a
Oh.
problem when people, pirate and don't own the game, which I've done a little bit, and you
Mhm.
don't. That part's illegal, but do they really care? No. Nintendo goes after the platform and the emulators themselves because it's too much of a hassle to go after individual people.
Yeah.
So yes, in terms of ownership, we have the disc. Yeah, it's like CDs and Blu-rays and DVDs. If you bought the content, you can rip it as long as you don't share it illegally. Then you're fine.
So
That's my understanding.
in in my work, um, I have to obtain evidence wherever possible, and sometimes I do internet searches. And the thing is, on the internet, most pages will have a terms of use or a copy or privacy or a copyright page explaining what is the authorized use of that page. And a lot of them do say that it is prohibited to copy or duplicate the web page, even if it's for like your own personal use. A lot of them do not allow that, other than the fact that your computer will automatically make a cache of the web page. That is usually the exception. So what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to copyright law, sometimes it's not even about whether the content was shared or not. Sometimes it's just as simple as making a copy of it, even if it's for your own personal use. So for that, some copyright lawyers may say that yes, okay, simply by making a copy, you have violated the license agreement or terms of use or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I don't know. Uh, I only know that when it comes to like gaming media, you are technically allowed, but yes, I believe it is frowned upon by all the Nintendo and at least mainly Nintendo.
Yeah, well, Nintendo, I mean, their business is they have to protect their IP. I mean, it's what makes their money. So I can't really blame them. Just like if you were to make your own game and then people start, making copies of your game without buying it, like you would be upset as the creator, right? And that goes for a lot of creative media too, like people making, people taking pictures, right? They have a photo that they took of like this, I don't know, maybe of an maybe of a beach, maybe of a mountain, right?
Take a picture of the Eiffel Tower and you will be sued
Yeah.
at night.
No, but I'm saying like the photo actually belongs to you. So for other people to make copies of it without your permission, that kind of violates um, copyright law, provided that you have copyrighted it. But just saying IP in general, the IP belongs to you because you made that. You made that photo.
So if I made a copy of a game, does that mean you still own it?
Mm, I don't think so.
So, you know the Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes game? I bought that from Humble Bundle, and uh, it's actually pretty nice how they did it. They give you a Steam key, which is I just plug in, and they also give you the DRM version, which means you can just share with anyone you want,
Yes.
and
So that's whatever the publisher decided
yes, that
was
is it.
okay, right? So if they allow you to obtain a DRM free version of the game, it just simply means it's DRM free. They're like the end user agreement, you would have to go through that and I guess interpret it and find out whether or not you can actually legally make a copy of the game and share it. In most cases, I don't think it would be allowed because why would any publisher willingly allow that?
Yeah, they don't want you like spreading the DRM free version. I
Yeah.
mean, I did buy a copy of the game. Technically two copies if because well, Steam key.
Yes.
The only difference I believe is that I don't get Steam Workshop mods on the DRM free version. I'm not sure about that, but so the benefit of having it on the Steam platform would be access to the workshop mods. And that's kind of cool
Yes.
as like a service by Steam, right? So
Mm, as a platform, yes, as a service, but then it would like when it comes to the mods themselves, like you have the mod creators that I suppose they do have some IP rights to what they create, but then a lot of it is based on the assets. And sometimes those assets have to be bought. Sometimes those assets are Creative Commons. So they're used on a Creative Commons license.
I suppose as long as
Which
those mods like don't make a profit or try to sell it, if it's free, then I guess it's fair game.
mm, I don't think copyright law really has anything to do to say that you have to make a profit. But it's just simply the fact that like okay, the IP rights have to be respected.
Hmm. I do know for
But,
Unity.
but of course, if there was profit to be made, then that could be considered as damages.
Yeah, because they gotta give credit to
Yeah.
the well, think of it this way. There are some Unity assets you can buy and then I guess use them as a mod or in your game. And so technically you paid for the use of the asset. I don't know.
Yeah. That sounds about right.
And then when you use in your game, you can profit off that.
Mm, yes. But that's different because like the asset is like how do you put it this way? So let's say you're building something, right? And then you're collecting the building materials from a variety of sources. Now, are those like building materials like do they generate any income or revenue by themselves? Not really.
In this case, the asset will be more like a blueprint, so kind of like a IP in a way. So you're buying the blueprint for the to use in your game versus buying the actual materials to use in the building. You're just buying the blueprint so you can build the building. That's a good analogy.
Yeah. Mm.
We should do some more keep talking and nobody explodes next time. Shadow GX, he's actually pulled me into this. Well, this Saturday is trying to get me to play some emulated Zelda multiplayer. So I spent
Zelda?
half an hour. Ocarina of Time actually. Do you know about it?
No idea.
Legend of Zelda franchise. Got the green, the boy wearing a green cap, trying to save the princess and kick a castle. Yeah.
I know
So
Zelda. I just
yeah,
haven't played it.
yeah. Neither have I. So turns out there's actually you can download the ROM. And there's a multiplayer version as long as you set it up correctly. So we spent half an hour trying to figure that out on Saturday, and I don't know. I have yet to actually play the game. I only loaded the game and had to do laundry. So, but that game was technically ripped from the old CD and now preserved on the internet as a ROM. So now
That's
it's
interesting because like I guess some things in the world have value when preserved. Kind of like let's say the painting of Mona Lisa, and then somehow the Louvre Museum, I guess they have ownership of it, and then they're able to basically profit off of it, make revenue off people seeing the painting of Mona Lisa.
well, I'm just glad game preservation exists because one of the things you could do on the Steam Deck is do a lot of emulation and live out any games you skipped over your childhood. So if I really wanted to, I could just go back to my old, I don't know, play the old Wii or the Game Boy games. Oh, interesting article from the Video Game History Foundation. 87% missing the disappearance of classic video games. So
Mm.
87% of classic video games released in the US are critically endangered. So their first paragraph says, imagine if the only way to watch Titanic was to find a used VHS tape and maintain your own vintage equipment so that you could still watch it. And what if no library, not even the Library of Congress, could do any better? They could keep and digitize the VHS of Titanic, but you'd have to go all the way there to watch it. It sounds crazy, but that's the reality we live in with video games. A $180 billion dollar industry, while their games and their history disappear. Wow, I did not know that. That 9 in 10 classic games just disappear.
Mm, well, people eventually move on from games, and they become irrelevant as new games come out, and they become even more irrelevant when I guess the the original developers or the publishers they go bust for whatever reason, or they dissolve.
Yeah, it's
Um,
ownership. But
and
that
then
could apply to any industry really. They talk about the Titanic movie.
yes, so it's like, can you imagine if Microsoft ever went just disappeared one day? They went bust for whatever reason, or they were dissolved, and then suddenly the how the pretty much the entire computerized world depends on Microsoft.
Yeah, for patches and updates.
Yeah.
That would
And
be
especially because like a software as a service now, then in some ways people don't really own what Microsoft gives to them. It's
God,
now
I hate software as a
being
service. I would rather much pay for like a one-time thing, but yes,
yeah,
there's some benefits and it keeps the cash flow flowing for the company.
yeah. A lot of companies are switching away from like one-time licenses to software as a service.
And that'll also apply to video games. Gaming as a service.
Yeah.
Yay.
So I think as we circle back to the original topic that we're talking about today,
Steam goes
about
down.
whether games are like are they personal property or are they a license, I think it's safe to say that they are considered as a license. And then I guess the best way to treat it, personally, I would just enjoy the game while it lasts.
It's definitely like for the games that are a service, yeah, it's definitely a license.
Yes. And even for the older games, like I do have some CD keys for like Medal of Honor and Call of Duty, which were mostly I'll say mostly a single player experience. I'm still holding on to those.
Oh, I thought you sold your stuff.
I sold the Nintendo games.
Okay, I gotta do that when I get back
Mhm.
home.
Yeah, I sold it and then I felt like I might regret it, but to be honest, I don't really regret it. It didn't really have a place in my life anymore. And then I could also make like almost like $5,000 from selling all my like basically baggage that I didn't really need.
Yeah, I agree. And now that's all digitized and emulation's a big thing now. It's so viable to emulate. You don't really
Yeah.
truly can't throw it away because you can always download the ROM and play that way, you know?
Yeah. So for some people who collect video games, like they're a collector of the physical product. They want the cassette tape or they want the um the box in which it came in.
Yeah, so I paid for the silver edition for Persona 5. That came in a nice steel CD case, and it came with a PS4 theme. Yeah, that's something. Pay like $60 for that during the pandemic, and now it's only worth 20 bucks, which I'm trying to sell. Devalued so much, but
Yeah. I mean like it it's in a way it's considered as almost art. Like there's a finite amount of those CD keys or cassettes in the world. And to some people it's art, to some people it's like a finite commodity.
I will tell you right now, Persona 5 Royale is a friggin' masterpiece. So yes, it is almost like art, at least for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And am I happy that the video game industry has turned into this almost like software as a service um, licensing kind of deal with the consumers? I would say, I mean, it's the way forward. It's it's kind of
Ugh.
useless to look back in time and because things were just different back then. The internet was not really as let's say how to say this.
I would say it's evolving, yes. Is it the way
Yes,
forward? I don't think so. I wouldn't think so.
I'm not sure.
If you look at the Forever Winter game, they're talking about they're trying to bring back the good old days. And so one of the like for their multiplayer, it's all like peer-to-peer communication, same as GTFO. So there are no servers involved, which means If we're playing with Dead Set, you're gonna feel the lag.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's slightly different. So that one doesn't depend on a connection to some sort of like dedicated service or a server.
But it still requires Steam to do the matchmaking for you, which is
Right.
actually still more convenient than doing like networking for space engineers and stuff like that.
Yeah. Basically
But
one less third party to rely on to base the connection off of.
the Steam multiplayer is so good for just
Yeah.
right clicking
Let's
on
talk
your
about
friends.
that how that game is being released eventually on early access, and we should also touch upon the whole idea of early access.
Oh yeah, that was our next topic. So
Early access was never a thing. It's only been the past few years, or let's say the past decade or so, that early access has become an actual thing.
what is early access? Let's ask Google that.
So
Oh,
early access is
there's actually a Wikipedia
generally when,
page.
yeah. So it's generally when the publisher releases in a viable product, but cannot be considered as a complete game.
Yes, alpha
And then
access, game
and then the
preview.
players, the consumers, they can buy the early access or like the license to the early access and eventually the full game at supposedly a reduced price.
I actually beta tested a game on Steam once. It was the Psychopath's Mandatory Happiness visual novel on Steam, and at the end of the beta, I actually got the game for free, which was nice on them.
Right. I alpha tested one game, and then I also got the game for free because I need the license to alpha test it.
So with early access, it's like you gotta pay the beta test, and you're not getting the game for free.
Yes. Uh, in the financial, from a financial perspective, early access is considered a way to transfer risk. So they're transferring financial risk from the publisher themselves or the developers onto the consumers.
Yeah. Did you hear
So
about
as a
the
consumer,
Go ahead, go ahead.
um, yeah, as a consumer, it's hard for me to get behind the idea of early access unless the game itself was so promising and so compelling
Right, you believe in the
that
vision.
I would still buy it in its current state. I would still play it and enjoy it in its current state. And
Did you
that
hear
was
about
the
the latest fuck up in the gaming industry?
no, tell me about it.
Concord was a game that was supposed to be released as a hero shooter on PS4, and they put in, time, money, years of effort, millions of dollars, billions of dollars, I don't know. And, you know, it was supposed to be, the next big thing until Sony killed it after a week,
And was it
two
early
after
access?
2 weeks. I think there was a beta, and somehow the game was actually killed as a service 2 weeks later. So people got refunds and stuff like that. So
Yeah. There has been a growing trend of early access games that, they collect the money from the player base and then, well, now that they've gotten the money, they're lacking the motivation and incentive to actually properly finish the game because, well, we got the money ready, right? So why should I continue to work on it?
in this case, it's like they promise refunds, but they're struggling to refund players. So it's like a
Yeah.
quick cash grab. But we put
Yes.
so much effort into this game, and it flopped within 2 weeks. Shadow was telling me about it. I was like, what
Yeah.
is Concord? Never heard of it. And I looked into it. So
And there's been a lot of games that were initially early access and then come full release 1.0 and it's very lackluster. It's not what could be considered as a complete game by some people.
did you know Minecraft was early access?
I did not know.
Kind of. Uh, the Wikipedia says one of the best known early examples was Minecraft. The guy, Marcus Persson, developed it in 2009 along with his full-time job. So, and the alpha version proved popular that over time he charged he charged money and then yeah. So, passion project gained enough attention and financial backing that it was a success story, you know?
Yeah.
At least for indie players, indie titles.
So I think early access has its place and purpose, but it's very susceptible to abuse by, let's say, nefarious publishers.
No, that's the same with any Kickstarter too. You want to kickstart
Yes,
the umbrella that shoots air around you?
yes,
I believe that when it first came out. I was like, damn, that's pretty cool. Of course, it was a scam. They take your money and run.
yes. So as a consumer, I generally shy away from early access unless the viewable product is like it's something that
So,
I want today. I'm not hoping for the promises to be fulfilled. The product today in early access is already something that I want. So only in that condition would I buy early access.
So to tie back to For Winter, I notice you do not have it on your wish list.
Mm, I guess I could wishlist it. No harm in doing so.
Well, Alexi and Detsa in green and Shadow GX have it listed.
so, here's the deal.
And I as well. There's 2 weeks left, and supposedly, well, I know Alexi's gonna wait for reviews before he
I
buys.
always wait for reviews.
Yeah, it's a good indicator.
Like I don't want to be the one to I don't want to be the guinea pig.
Oh, you can still try
And
it, put 2 hours in and back out.
yes, but a lot of the times like you won't feel the full scope of the game within 2 hours.
What about the curators? And to be honest, there was a early beta which people played and upload their online. And because
Hmm.
there's no NDA, there were no restrictions on the amount of gameplay you could upload.
Hmm.
So people and these curators actually kind of played the game and I guess reviewed it.
Yeah. I suppose there's like, you could watch gameplay videos. Huh.
Here, this
But
one.
it's like at some point you have to decide like how much research would you do for that one purchase of
Mhm.
however many dollars, right?
This guy says it's a must-play for survival fans, but the first line says co-op tactical survival horror. Are you scared? Because I know you
Uh,
didn't like you didn't
based
like
on
GTA.
the based on the gameplay trailer, it did not seem that much horror.
Really, you wouldn't
Or is that like
consider dead bodies hanging from tanks to be horror.
oh no, not really. Horror is subjective too.
True, true. The horror in GTFO is different from the horror in Forever Winter.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think what the Forever Winter promises is a very good promise, and they've been very transparent actually with in their beta tests and how they're going to move things. So hopefully it stays that way. And the only problem with early access is there's a content drought, and yes, the devs are cooking, but then the player base is kind of expecting an update. It's like, what's going on? I put money into this.
Yeah,
Where's this?
it becomes a very weird contract between the players, the consumers, and the developers. In
Nice.
that, like, it's not a legally enforced contract per se, but they they ought to deliver something.
Well, you played Ready or Not, and that was early access, right? And then they finally
Yes.
went 1.0. So how did you feel about when they just had no content for like a few months?
Like I said before, the game itself at that stage was already a viable product. It felt complete in its own already. So I didn't have any complaints about that.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise I would not normally buy early access for the amount of risk that I'm taking as a consumer.
What level of, I guess, for you, 27 US dollars is probably a high risk for you. If it was like $5.
Well, because like there's also like if you look at it purely on a money standpoint, the earlier you put in the money,
So,
I
here's the
mean
deal.
that's opportunity cost, right? You could have saved that $27 or whatever and then put it into a savings account, earning interest. And then buy the full 1.0 release later on for a slightly higher price, but you would have gained interest from the opportunity cost.
Oh, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even putting in the money
So,
to save it.
to put in the money early, it's like okay, you already committed. You already committed your money into this.
You're committing your money and your time to enjoy, essentially.
Yes. So that's why I see early access as fundamentally it's risk transference from the publisher to the consumer.
Got it. That's why you don't buy that many games.
Yeah. And it's actually kind of funny because I'm sure that the publishers had like whoever started early access thought this would be a great idea. And for publishers it is. I think it is a great idea because that way they get startup capital um, quite easily.
Well, publishers
Um,
meaning big companies or indie developers?
Even indie developers, whoever's basically selling the game, it doesn't have to be a publisher. It's almost like the IPOs of the gaming world, where people buy, instead of buying shares of a stock that they think will perform well or will go up, they're buying a copy of a game which they think will turn out well.
It's like back in the old days, they funded artists and like musicians to perform pieces of work and make some good artwork in a way as a
Yeah.
sponsor. Oh, it says here on the Wikipedia page that Steam added early access in 2013, which is over 10 years ago.
Yes.
Can you believe that?
I do think there should be more, I guess, checks and balances on the use of early access.
I mean, even us, even us two, we can just make an early access game, 10 minutes maybe, and then put on the Steam page for $1. And then it could take years for like early access to come out. And that's
Yeah.
just one way of milking the community, I guess.
Yeah, that's almost like straight up fraud at that point.
Well, there's some games that are like long time early access.
Yeah. Long time early access and or 1.0 releases that don't deliver the promise.
It's like 7 Days to Die has
Basically
10 years of
abandon
7 Days to Die has 10 years of early access. 11 years. Project Zomboid, Don't Starve, 3 years. The Sims 2, 4 years of early access.
Yeah, I think Steam as a platform, they should enforce how long early access can be.
Will it be right for them to force that though?
As a platform, they have every right.
Like say it's like, I mean, it's just a label, to be honest. And technically it is an incomplete product, but say the developer is like in freaking Ukraine, they can't really develop while they're fighting a war. That pushes back development time, or
I guess those are extenuating circumstances that
well,
could be considered by the Steam, you know, product managers or whatever they have there over there.
if we were to apply a rule to Minecraft, then it would have never gotten developed because it took a guy as a passion project years to build the game. So I don't know.
It can be it can be I think it can be negotiated on a case by case basis. So let's say if I was if I was a product manager at Steam and then I have a big AAA coming to me saying, okay, I want this Battlefield 10 to be early access. I'm like, okay, you have 6 months in early access.
Oh, yeah,
Whereas
maybe.
if some indie developer comes to me and says, okay, I only have 5 employees and I think I need at minimum 3 years to be early access, I'll be like, okay, that sounds reasonable.
That does sound like a good plan.
Yes. So that basically Steam should, in my opinion, they should have more checks and balances when it comes to people using early access, the early access model, because the way that it's being used right now, it's so open to abuse,
Yeah, you don't,
and
and it's
you
more
get like
risk
these
for the
big,
gamer.
yeah, exactly, and you get these like big game companies that are just like using early access as a way to get money, and then they're delivering subpar products in the very end.
What would you say is a large company? Because I know GTFO was in early access, and oh, they were like a
Mm,
small team, and then they grew up to like 50 people over like 4 years. Was it
that
early
would also
access?
be, I mean, when it comes to numbers, ultimately it's arbitrary.
Yeah, because
You could say 10 employees, you could say 50, you could say 100, right?
if you hire like 50 artists and you only have one programmer, your game is not going to be programmed.
Yeah. And I can also see how if such a rule were to be implemented, then the companies they could misrepresent their payroll. They could basically have fake employees.
To get the longer early access.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that's a way around it. Interesting. Did you know
But
Fortnite
in
was
I
early
guess
access?
oh but yeah, in the absence of like any meaningful rules and regulations around early access, it's basically a free for all. People can do whatever they want.
Yeah, I think the benefit of early access is just to get attention. Because if you have a good idea, like with Forever Winter, you need to make that capital. So at least they've worked on it, so it looks playable enough, and the idea and format is well defined and theme. Uh, that way, it gets with early access, it gains the attention and an incentive for consumers like me and you to commit.
I think what could be done if I were to throw out an idea is to extend the refund policy when it comes to early access. So instead of 2 hours in 2 weeks, extend the refund policy up to like the the following 2 or 3 times that the game is updated, which could be weeks, it could be months, depending on the developer, on how frequently they update.
Hmm. in that way, that could also be abused, where you just refund and then buy it again when it updates. You know?
Mm, I suppose, yes. But yeah, there's no easy solution to this early access model. Can only say buyer beware.
Yeah, there's been some stories where I guess the games are just unfinished and never actually, like, someone fucked up, financial wise or development wise.
Mhm.
And did you know with Subnautica, that game came out of early access a year ago or two. Um, at some point, their code is just like a bunch of spaghetti where if they try to if they try to add a new feature or fix something and it breaks the game, it would be better just to remake the game from scratch. You know?
Oh.
I think there's a special term for that. I forgot what it's called. Where you just the point of no return. So in a way, if developers make a product for a time and it's like a jumbled mess past the point of no return, then they're better off just making a new game from scratch.
Hmm.
Currently reading through the Wikipedia page. Ooh, video game critics have generally developed policies to avoid doing final score reviews for games in early access, instead offering interim commentary on the game. Polygame states that they should provide consumer commentary, but recognize that early access titles are still in progress works, and so they will handle them different than normal product reviews. Uh, yeah, and then games in early access are not considered qualified for the awards, but there was an exception for like when PUBG was nominated 2017 because that was a big one.
Hmm.
Oh,
Well, awards are, I don't know.
yeah, I would think that you want the game to
I'll
be
take it with a grain of
nominated.
salt. Just like you know how every year there's like a list of top 100 managed companies or like top 100 employers to work for
Yeah.
in USA or in your state, right? That stuff is all bought. Is the employer, is the company paying to be on that list?
Oh, really?
Yes.
A study using Steam's early access as of November 2014 found that 25% of the titles submitted as early access had made it to a final release form.
Oh man, that's not a good number.
That was like 2014, which is 10 years ago, so it's probably even lower now.
It's lower now once people figured out how to abuse the system.
But there's so many indie games, so who knows what the actual number is.
Yeah, I
And
think early access is best. Like its purpose is really best for indie games. You know, those people who don't have the backing
yeah,
of a big studio, then I can see being a legitimate purpose. But for like big companies to use early access, I think that's a little. Mm.
yeah. Imagine Nintendo had an early access game. No way, man. So with the Forever Winter, what are your thoughts on if you're gonna buy it or not?
I
What's your
will not
criteria?
buy it. I will not buy it until I see enough, at least enough compelling reviews.
Okay, so given that it had gotten some hype, when would that be? Like, how many reviews
Mm,
would you need? Because not 10 reviews would be great. You probably want to see like maybe 1,000.
yeah, like there's no hard number. It's just in the end, it's still a feeling.
Level Zero Extraction, another game, has 1,800 reviews, but it's mixed. So
I do like extraction shooters, but it feels like Arma 3 Escape is still the best extraction shooter. I mean, DRG is, I guess, considered an extraction shooter in some way. But the theme is is a very niche theme. Like you're mining and you're shooting bugs and stuff like that.
Well, this one's about you're a human and you're, let's see, it's actually PvE. So you can actually play as the alien, play as rival mercenaries, like a three-man team fighting for loot, or as alien monsters hunting humans from the dark, solo or friends. So PvPvE.
PvP.
No, there's also a NPC aspect as well. So I actually like the direction we're going now with like the Forever Winter is they bring in the PvE as well as the PvP sometimes. No, as well as well no, this game is PvPvE, so there's entities and players, and Forever Winter is PvEVE. Do you understand?
Um, player versus enemy.
No. It's Forever Winter is player versus enemy because
Oh, okay. So
Forever Winter you're not the main character. You're the ant on the floor while someone's fighting the war above you. So you have to learn how to avoid
you're like a
them.
survivor.
Yes. Versus this game, level 0 extraction is player versus entity. So
Mm.
interesting. Interesting how they're tweaking it and experimenting it. So either it's gonna be a very good game and very distinct as very like a fresh taste, or it's gonna flop.
The thing of having too much hype is there's a lot of expectation.
Have you heard about Escape from Tarkov? That's another extraction shooter, looter extraction.
Yes, but I've heard not so good things about it.
Yeah, I didn't really get into it or never buy it. I know that someone else did, and
It's a PvP, right?
yeah, it's both PvP VE because sometimes they have bots. So the gameplay loop is you dropping in, you grab whatever shit, and you extract. That's it. So all the firefights and how you play is what keeps you in the game loop.
Mm.
In a way, the Forever Winter is similar to that, where you're looting, but there's no other player aspect, so it's tactical in a way where more survival. Hopefully, within 2 weeks, we'll see some good results.
Yeah.
I have like 5 friends in total. It says it's similar to Warframe. What the hell? Did you know how many games were on Steam's early access when it first started?
I have no idea.
When they first launched it, they only had like 12 games on the list.
How about now?
I don't know. You go to Steam Store, you click on Forever Winter Early Access, and they are. Of course, you gotta search by category now because it's no longer just. Oh, look, the not safe for work stuff on Steam Early Access. What the hell? That's early access? No, it's not. What the fuck? Oh god. I clicked that one and it started playing some trailer. Lust Fantasy on Steam. For the horny boys. I click on early access, but it doesn't give me a list? What? First person social deduction game combining real time action and communication, 3-day players. While most players will do their best to complete objectives and ensure victory, a small proportion. Oh, it's basically like Among Us. But first player. Oh my god. Early access for $10. At least it doesn't take. that high of a spec. Oh yeah, I should ask you about your computer, if it can even run Forever Winter. Did you see the specs?
Let me see right now.
I'm
Okay,
glad I upgraded, but that still puts me like the middle of the pack for a decent gaming rig.
I'm not sure if I have enough graphic core memory, or if my graphics processor is even powerful enough.
Yeah, they want
So,
8 gigabytes of
here's the
VRAM.
deal. These past few months, we've had an outpour of positive reception from you
It just
guys
goes to show how
around.
much textures they added for the game, and maybe it's like 100 gigabytes in uncompressed textures like Ready or Not.
Yeah, I think mine is 6 gigabytes of GPU memory.
That is
Yeah,
minimum spec nowadays, at least for these kinds of games. If you're doing like Overcooked, that's fine.
yeah. I guess I will not be able to play this then.
Well, you can try. I expect there to be VSR, FSR, so you can do upscaling if you need to, like in Ready or Not. Dad said he has to use Well, I told him to use upscaling for Ready or Not because his RX 580 is like ancient, but still good. Uh, yeah,
The textures of the game look pretty complex. A lot of clutter.
it's definitely not like Deep Rock. Deep Rock is such a blessing in terms of textures.
Yeah.